Oh, just got done with the holidays and I cannot eat anymore. Man, I have eaten so much stuff. Whew. I probably could barely fit in a restraint right now. Hey, let's talk about XL restraints on rides.
Now get ready. Here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ride and Ride Mechanic channel. How the heck are you doing today? Alright, today's video, I've decided to talk about, someone asked me this question. They said, hey, what's up with XL restraints on rides? How come rides don't fit larger people? So, I wanted to talk about that because the answer is a little complicated. It's a little in-depth. There's a lot of things in this video that I want to go into that, might jump into where it might make some people uncomfortable. And that's not my goal. I'm not trying to shame anybody here. So, I just wanted to say my story first. Well, where I sit today, quite literally, I wasn't always here. So for a long time, I was much heavier than I am now. In fact, when I left my job as being a ride mechanic and had to move out here to the Midwest, I was actually at my heaviest right there. And since then, I've lost about 80 pounds. I'm 80 pounds down now. Like, this shirt I've had for a very long time. This shirt actually used to be tight on me. Like, it used to be tight. And it's not that way anymore. When it comes to the walk of shame, for those people who don't know, that's when you go to get on a ride and for whatever reason, you don't fit on the ride or you can't get on it for some reason and then you have to walk off. That's referred to as the walk of shame. I've had to do that a bunch of times for all sorts of different rides. Heck, I still have to do that. Like, I don't remember what the name of the ride is. There's a little Mad Mouse coaster down in Knott's Berry Farm where it says right on it, if you're tall, you pretty much won't be able to go on this ride because the legs won't fit underneath the restraints. I've tried it 2 different times, and both times I cannot get my legs underneath the restraints to close down. So that particular one, I'm too tall to ride it, so I have to walk of shame that every time. But I keep trying. Like, maybe I'll shorten up sometime. Maybe I might lose some height and be able to fit on that ride again. When I was working at the park, our Intamain impulse coaster, actually, where this seat came from right here, this was something that for a long time I was not able to fit on. Just period. Wasn't able to fit on it. And then I lost some weight and I was able to fit on some seats. That was motivation for me to poke at Intamain and say, hey, how come I can fit on some seats and not the others? And they said, well, it must be your seatbelt buckles are worn. And I was like, no, that's not the case. They're all the same length. What is the minimum dimension between the seat bottom and the inside of the restraint so I can measure it on all of our seats and then make sure the seat is set appropriately? And they wouldn't give it to me. I don't know why. They said the seat buckle lands where it does, and it's listed on the print that way. And they said that the restraint closes down to the buckle latches, and that's the end of the story. Honestly, it kind of sounded like they didn't know. But understandable. Some of those older rides, they put stuff in place, like they put things in here and says, this has to live on this position, and you use this belt. And then when the belt closes, they say, okay, it's good. But they never really went back through and they said, this is the dimension the restraint has to be. They put a tolerance on the seatbelt itself, like where it has to be, just to their own specs. But it wasn't anything like the ride manual, like once it stretched past this point, the seatbelt had to be replaced. So we were kind of flying blind there. So when it comes to rides and XL restraints, realistically, a lot of us know what I'm talking about. XL restraints, these are also known as big boy restraints, or we also call them fat boy restraints. Don't take any offense out there, just what we call them. And then there was a time when I myself could not fit in an XL restraint. It's like got it down and couldn't get either one of the buckles in. I was that heavy. It turns out, after doing some research, because I was curious on this topic myself, I was looking around, I'm like, how many other manufacturers make XL restraints for their rides? And my research so far, granted there's a lot of other people out here, and there's a lot of manufacturers. Man, there are so many manufacturers out there that do all sorts of stuff. So I'm not saying there's no other XL seats out there, but there's not a lot for sure. All right, so pretty much when we talk about XL restraints, we are actually talking about the Bollinger and Malabar to B&M XL restraint. That comes to mind. B&M is one of the only companies out there that puts an extra large restraint into their ride. A lot of them have two extra large restraints per train, typically. Most of the time, they're indicated by the two seat belts on the front of the restraint. If you look at the restraints, a normal restraint has one seat belt that goes over the front. Again, on a B&M, most of them, that is a gauge saying that the restraint is closed as far as it should go to be safely closed. That's typically, if you count the clicks down, there's on a B&M restraint, there's 8 clicks. You go 1, 2, 3, 4, and the seatbelt should latch on that 4, and then 5, 6, 7, 8, and all the way down to the bottom. On the XL restraint, they function, everything looks the same, but they're just a little bit taller. So the older style is a little bit taller, and by that I mean they have a special claw inside the restraint. The claw is the centerpiece that the actual restraint rotates down with. And then they have 4, 6, 8. They have 8 cams that ride around the outside, and those are the clicking as it comes down. So you have 8 cams, they're in pairs of 2, 2, 4, 6, 8. And the clicks you have, every time you hear a click, that's 2 cams dropping in place. So there's actually your primary and a secondary, or 1, 2, 3, 4, and then your seatbelt goes in. This is the exact same thing for an extra large restraint, except for the extra large restraint, the cam, if you look at the side of it, the little star-shaped piece in the center, what we call the churro looking piece in the center was just clocked a little bit further forward, not by much. It just twisted just a hair forward. That allowed, when you made that 1, 2, 3, 4 to the point where the seatbelt should lock in, those 2 longer extra large seatbelts are able to clip in to that harness. And then the fun part about those is that the maximum distance, and I don't know what the distance is on those because B&M didn't specify the distance either. So the maximum distance was higher away from the seat, allowing somebody with a bigger belly to sit there. The minimum distance, as far down as it goes and clicks to the bottom, was the same. So if you think about it, click number 8, basically as it goes down. Click 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All the dimensions, including the extra large restraints at click number 8, were all the exact same. But click number 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, where the restraints, the seatbelt would actually latch into, the extra large restraints were up slightly higher than everything else. If you look down the row, you could see them nice. You see all the restraint angles going down like this. It'd be like 1, and then you see the extra large up just a little bit more, and then back down. Now, B&M also didn't specify, at least for ours, they did not specify where the extra large restraints went. So it was up to us to put them wherever we wanted. My particular park, we operated our train where the 2 seats were typically in row 4, middle of the train. So like you go 1, 2, 3, 4, both seats were there, not the outside on either side. So they were the 2 middle seats. We decided to do that just because that's where we thought. People asked, well, why wouldn't you stagger them apart from each other? So where you had an XL seat in like row 4 and an XL seat in row 5, because we were only allowed 2 per train. Don't know why. I don't know if that was a weight thing or whatever it might have been. But I think the park did experiment with moving those seats around, 1 on each. But when I was there, it was like, well, a lot of time if you have somebody with an extra large size, a lot of times they're with somebody else who is also an extra large size. There's a good chance they might want to sit next to their person. The friend that they brought, or husband, wife, significant other, child, whatever it might be. So I remember that was really tough for me when I was pretty much at my heaviest weight, and we went back to visit the park, and my son was finally old enough to ride the floorless coaster, and he wanted to ride the front row, which was perfectly fine. But my problem is that I would not fit in a regular restraint. So I had to go back to row 4 to the extra large restraint. Now, that wasn't like I wasn't upset at the park or anything like that. That was my choices, years and a lifetime of my choices got me to where I was at that particular time. But it was one of those things, I say like, oh, a lot of people, like myself, when I said, oh, I'm going to lose weight and get myself down to a healthier weight, I firmly believe this. I'm sorry, I don't mean to preach to people at all. I'm not trying to change anybody here, but if you're looking to lose weight, I firmly believe you have to have your aha moment before you're ready to lose weight. If you haven't had your aha moment, it's not going to happen. You're going to diet, you're going to exercise, you're going to fail, you're going to go right back to it again. But for me, my aha moment was when I couldn't sit next to my son on his ride for the first time because I was too big. That was the motivation I needed to put myself where I am today. Now him and I can ride together. It's not a problem. So later revisions of the B&M XL restraint, from what I've told, because I haven't actually worked on them, but I've talked with people, because they would say, okay, in the earlier revision you had the mechanical claw with different size cams basically that allowed the whole thing to rotate backwards a little bit, so you can use the same style restraint, the same style seat, the same style padding, everything else, but it was subject to maintenance screwing things up, because inevitably you would get somebody new putting restraints back together. And when you're in that, you sort all your parts and pieces out and you organize the cams together. And it's like once you get that, you got your hands all greasy and you're just putting restraints back together. And you get in this motion, you're just going through things. You're taking, oh, yep, there's my position 1 cams. I put those 2 together, spacer, another cam, spacer, another cam, slide that in there, the spacer on the end, slide the pin through the end. Okay, move to my uppers. Set your unlock in there, and then you move through the uppers and you start putting those in with all the spacers and everything else. And you just get in that groove of doing that, and you keep going along. And pretty soon at the end, you can go all the way through. They could put all the restraints together. Honestly, it doesn't take long to do when you assemble the top end like that. It'll probably take a crew of 2 people. I don't know, about 4 hours. It's not very long at all. Because it's all like pinned in place, so it's really easy to do. And they go through and like, okay, and then you'll go back and check the extra large restraints where they had those 2 seat buckles out there, and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you close the whole row down to 4 clicks, and then you just look down the angle of all the restraints that are sitting up there, and they're all at a certain angle like this, including the extra large restraints, and then it's just like, uh-oh, they shouldn't be that way. They should be up higher. And then you're like, where did the extra large restraint stuff go? And then it was like, huh? And then it's like, all right, well, you didn't pay attention to it. Take everything back apart. And they're like, what? I'm like, there's 2 claws that only fit in these 8 cams. Like 8 cams, 2 claws. And you have to go back through the train and find out where everything is. Now, visually, you could find them once you take the hoods and covers off the back. You could find them pretty easily. It's just like, oh, there's a step right there. So it's like, that's the one right there. The claw is indicated on the front. The front of the claw is curved. That goes right over where the shock is. And the extra large restraints, the claw has a little flat spot on them. So you can easily find those as well. So it's not, a whole day worth of work wasted, but you might have to take 8 restraints apart to put them all back together the correct way, so the 2 extra large restraints have their bigger stuff. Now, what I've heard from other people working on new B&M rides, not old ones, but new ones, is that B&M has actually changed the seat itself. So the seat itself, the pan and everything else is different inside there. So now you use all the restraint components correctly, all them the same restraints, the same claws, the same everything for those that are still using the claws. I mean, unless they're hydraulic, then it's still all the same. But the difference is the seat is lower, or it's inset further back down. So you could still fit a bigger guest in there with all the same components up on top. So that's a different revision of that. So that's B&M. What about everybody else out there? Well, like I was saying, there's really no one else out there that offers an extra large restraint. So most manufacturers have just switched to the tester seat out front. Most manufacturers provide a tester seat in front of the ride, since the restraints are monitored these days in the down position, so it has to go past a certain point before the little green light turns on. They have fabricated a whole nother seat, put it out in front of the ride, and given people a big indicator light that basically shows you, it could be just a green light on the bottom, it could be a red, and then it turns to a green. But it basically says if you can't sit in the seat and pull the restraint down and get that green light, you are not going to fit on the ride. You are going to walk of shame this ride. That's the way it is. So then the question becomes, okay, so the manufacturers tried to give you an out right there. They said, look, you could go wait in the 2-hour line and get on that ride just to find out that you're not going to fit. Or you could just try it at the beginning and see right there if you are going to fit or not. Now, if you are one of those people that's on the cusp where you sit down and that light is red or it's not on, and then your buddies can push the restraint down far enough to where that light suddenly turns on, you're 50-50. It depends on your operations crew. Some crew might go, oh, your restraint's not down far enough, and they might come by and just give you a good pile drive, or as the industry says, stapling down on that restraint until you do fit. And for those that have done that for extra large people, thank you very much. I really appreciated that. When I was right on that edge on rides, and then someone would come by and they get one of the bigger crew members over and they're like, this guy right here just like knocked the wind out of them, and they did. They're like, ugh, and I was like, oh, but I was like, thanks. I want to ride now. I appreciate that. So outside of this whole assembly, it's like, well, wait, why can bigger people just not ride these rides? Why is that not a thing? Well, the industry a long time ago went away from comfort in their rides and they went to fear. You've heard me say this before. If you're new to the channel, hey, like and subscribe. I have plenty of videos out like this out there that, you could see more of. And you'll find out what I say. But I say it all the time. I say the industry is built on perceived danger. It is built on the notion that we want people to get on the ride and feel like they're in danger. We want to put people as close as danger to possible without actually putting them in danger. So we want someone, honestly, to feel like they are going to die. But they're not. They're perfectly safe. In fact, we have all the safety ratings and everything else to back it up. But we want that perceived danger. And manufacturers wanted to deliver that perceived danger because that made the ride more thrilling. It made it scarier. It made more people want to ride it. So it's like, okay, how do you get more of a perceived danger? Well, you start taking things away from the rider. You take things out of their experience bubble. So if you've ever ridden an old Aero coaster, an old Vekoma coaster, because they're pretty much the same thing, Chance Morgan, hyper coasters, those sort of things, you're sitting inside of a cab. I mean, any wooden roller coaster is like this too, pretty much. You're sitting inside of a cab, and if I'm sitting on the left-hand side, that means I've got the left-hand side seat edge right here, where just my shoulders are up above, especially myself, just my shoulders are up above, and everything else is down below. I can slide left to right, especially older style trains that just had the single bar with no divider at all in there. You could slide to the left, you could slide to the right. There wasn't much there. They were like they were like a class 3 restraint, right? Where they were down, they were latched, but people couldn't unlock them, but that was it. They were just latched. They weren't monitored. They weren't anything else. So what the industry did is they said, well, it'd be scarier if we took those sides away. And it's like, okay, and then you've pretty much birthed into existence like every train vehicle out there that's produced these days, with the exception of wooden roller coasters. The seat is out in the open. There is nothing around the people. And it provides a different thrill factor. So why is that different? How did we lose that ability for an XL person able to ride an old Vekoma train, but that same XL person can't get on a, I don't know, the Intamin, like a Skyrush, like an Intamin hyper coaster. How come the two can't happen there? It's like, all right, to answer this question, here's how restraints work. Restraints work off of pinning your body inside them. Novel, crazy circumstances, I understand. But basically, the thing that they're trying to do is right here out of camera, where my torso joins and my waist and my legs come out. Right there where the femur bones join to the hips. They're going to pin the femur bones down into the seat. Now, one of the pioneers of this particular concept was actually, no, I shouldn't say pioneer, but one of the people that really developed this concept is Premier Rides with their Skyrocket models. They were able to do inversions, launches, everything else with just a lap bar. Now, I'm not talking like older roller coasters that just had a lap bar because you went through a loop and you were pegged into the seat at 2.5 G's through that loop. Not quite like that. I'm talking negative G-force. I'm talking 0 to negative G-force, pulling people out of their restraints. Premier figured out if you pin the shin bone up against the back and you pin your femur bones down into the seat, you're not going anywhere. In fact, you can't go anywhere. It's also one of the same concepts behind flying coasters. As long as you pin the femur bones and the shin bones, you're not going anywhere. You are stuck in that seat no matter what. The comfort collar on the flying coasters is just that. It's just for comfort. It's to keep your upper body supported so when you go down the drop, you don't snap your back in half, right? So this whole system relies on pinning your skeletal structure into the seat. You just think of yourself as a skeleton, and that restraint has to come down and hold your femur bones along with your hips and the backside of your spine into one fixed point. Okay, great. As the train goes through the track and you start to get lateral G-force, those G-forces that push you this way or this way instead of up and down, your body wants to come out of that seat. Well, that restraint holding your femurs down prevents that from happening. But out on the side of the seat, there are lateral supports. They're on pretty much everything. The lateral supports is what's keeping your butt in that seat. With me so far? I hope so. So the problem with extra large people is that the restraint comes down on not their femurs, on not their chest. The restraint comes down on this fat that's sitting out in front. And the fat's magnified because when you stand up, the fat for a lot of people kind of drapes over and goes down. But when you sit down, your legs hold all that back up and it pushes back towards you, making that pile of fat out there even bigger. When you close the restraint down, the restraint closes against fat. Well, you can't pin fat inside of a ride. It doesn't work. It goes out. Have you ever seen a video of an octopus escaping off of a seaboat? Like I've seen these videos out there where the octopus is it gets on the deck of this fishing boat, basically, and it goes out through this little tiny hole in the side of the ship that's only a couple of inches. This huge octopus goes right out the side of the hole because they have no bone mass inside there. They could just squish their whole body right through this little tiny hole and get out the side of the ship. Well, we are different. We have bones. All of the calculations that rides work off of are built around pinning your bone structure into the ride. When you close the restraint and you can't pin the bones and you have to pin the fat, different problem. The older rides, the old Chance Morgans, the old Vekomas, the old Arrows, Woodies and stuff like that encapsulate a person where the seat goes all the way around you and now you're kind of sitting in a big half shell. Those seats hold XL people great because there's nowhere for the person to go. Then you're just trying to keep them from flying up and out. You can't. You push them down, there's a floor underneath them. Push them to the left, there's a side there. You push them to the right, there's a side there. They are essentially stuck in that vehicle. But you take a newer vehicle. So let's check out Mack Rides, right? Stardust Racers, which has been in the spotlight for the wrong reasons these days. But we look at their vehicles, and their vehicles, which is also Hyperion, across the seas over there, their vehicles actually lift the rider up off the floor to where their feet aren't even touching the floor anymore. So you've even lost that downward perception now, that base that your feet would sit on. So now the seat pan and the restraint are now doing all the work of holding you in to the left, to the right, from coming out of the seat and from being pushed down through the seat. Yes, that restraint has to make this minimum dimension, which has to close around your bones, which if all of the fat gets in the way, it can't do that. You are going to come out. That's the problem. The math says if that restraint opens up too far, that your body will slide out of there. If it gets past a certain point, then your body, then your bones, your feet will be able to straighten out and you can come right out of the seat. So the manufacturer says, we can't get the restraint to that point. It's an absolute no-go. We can't do that. The restraint has to stay down here. And in order for the restraint to be down here, well, that means that you're going to have to fit that position. Now, for a long time, this dimension was changing rapidly, and it was getting narrower and narrower and narrower, which means that the rider requirements, the person that had to fit in that restraint, was getting smaller and smaller and smaller. The industry in general has shifted away from that. They heard everyone complain about it, rightfully so. A lot of people that could fit in rides places suddenly could not fit in these restraints. It was like, what are you guys trying to do? That's not something they can sell to parks at all. So a lot of the manufacturers said, how do we keep this open air feeling and keep our riders safe and allow a larger guest? So they did all sorts of things with the seat pan, the lateral supports, the restraint shape, the sizes, dimensions. Everything has been reworked over these years to accommodate larger riders, but it's still not going to accommodate everyone. So keeping that restraint in that minimum dimension is absolutely key. I remember our Huss Frisbee, very old ride, our Huss Frisbee, it had dimension right on there. You know, when we closed restraints down, all the LEDs had to turn on once they were all to this measurement. I can't remember what the measurement was. I want to say it was like 245 millimeters, somewhere in that dimension, but I'm not really sure on that one. But Huss put it right there on the print. Right there on the print, it had a picture of that maximum dimension measurement, and it said, for fattest guest, right there. I mean, a lot of the words didn't translate well. They didn't also play around with it, trying to like make people feel good. They simply just said what it was. So then you take these same rides where you've now lessened the ride vehicle around the person and you've made the experience really intense now, where you're suddenly getting high G-force in the lateral positions, up, down. You really have to work hard to pin that person into the seat with the restraint now. It's very difficult to do. It would be easier just to go backwards to older designs and say if we wanted larger people to fit in the rides all the time, then they can go backwards and they could say, okay, well, we're going to design it with the higher seat backs and things like that. You've seen this concept already in place. It's just not at the big thrill parks. Big thrill parks, they're taking most of that stuff away. The demands on the rider are higher, not lower, and they won't allow bigger riders to fit in there. Lower thrill parks, manufacturers make these things all the time. Look at Vekoma. Vekoma designs all sorts of stuff, all these older style rides, so they could fit people like that in parks like Disney. in parks where you have people of all sorts of walks of life out there that are going to want to ride these coasters, from everything from little kids to older adults. Disney has to make their rides fit in a much broader window. They're not delivering the aggressive G-force thrills like you would at one of your local parks, but they still want to deliver something to where an XL person can fit in that car no problem and go out and no problem ride the ride, as well as a little tiny person right next to them fit in the exact same restraint. Disney's good at doing stuff like that, trying to make it better for everybody. Could parks ask for extra large seats? Yes, they can. Will the ride manufacturer entertain that? I'm not sure if they would or not. It's obviously custom engineering at that point, and the vehicle has to be completely different around those two seats, because everything else that the vehicle was designed off of is going to be different now. It's not going to be the same, for sure. You're going to have different seats, different seat backs, different restraints, different restraint collars clasped around the people, all sorts of different stuff in there. So the real decision was just to make all the seats the exact same and not try to make individual seats different from the rest, so every guest could fit the same in every seat. When you get close to that XL dimension, like where I've been for a very long time, then you'll start finding inconsistencies out there. And kind of like at the very beginning of the video, was the inconsistencies I was pointing at. I remember, because I barely fit in seats, I actually took the advantage of working on the rides. And when my family or friends would come to visit and they'd say, hey, we want to go out and ride this ride, will you come with us after work tomorrow? It's like, yeah, sure, I'll come with you. So I would go down and I would have the mechanic, literally, I would test sit in every seat throughout the train. This guy in particular, because this receipt that I have right here, this guy had the hardest restraints in the park to fit in, bar none. So I would go to this particular ride and I would sit there, seat number 1, close the restraint down, see if I could buckle it. Nope. And I'd go to seat number 2, and I would keep going all the way through the train, and I'd actually document where I could and could not sit. Now, what was very interesting, and this was back at the beginning of the video, I contacted Intamain about these dimensions because I'm like, something doesn't add up here. We had old seatbelts and new seatbelts sprinkled throughout the train. They're all supposed to be the same. We had old seats and new seats sprinkled throughout the train. They're all supposed to be new. Yet, a lot of seats I can go to, sit down, pull the restraint close, go to put the buckle in the side, because these would live like right on the left-hand side or right-hand side of the restraints. I'd go to put that buckle down in there, and some seats I'd sit down and it was like 2 inches away from the buckle. Like, not even close to fitting inside of there. Other restraints, I would go down and sit there and pull the restraint down, and it would start to go into the receiver, and I just needed the mechanic to come by and give it one little push, and it would click and latch. And then there was a couple seats in there where I could go through and pull it down and buckle it myself. That was really interesting. So after a lot of work on those things, it's like we replaced all the seatbelts. Brand new seatbelts for the entire thing. Management really wanted to know why we wanted to put 28 seatbelts on that thing at quite a large cost per seatbelt. Like, why are we putting 28 seatbelts on that thing? It's like, because I'm trying something. But they trusted me. They were like, okay, go ahead and do it. So we spent a bunch of money, put all brand new seatbelts on there, and I got almost the exact same results. Like, wow, that's interesting. Now, we had our seatbelts made from an outside vendor, not Intamain. They weren't Intamain. We had them made from a different company that was authorized by engineering to use on that particular piece of equipment. So just out of curiosity, I made another very large purchase of seatbelts from Intamain, put them on the ride, and got the exact same thing. And that's when I was like, I wonder why that is. I started to scratch that, but basically It didn't sound like Intamin had the data to know where the minimum restraint dimension was on that ride. Which, okay, you've defined everything else. As long as it's put together the way they said it is, then it's okay. Again, mechanics, we're just there to maintain the ride. We're not there to engineer the ride. I was just trying to figure out if we were using wrong belts or wrong something else, and couldn't figure that one out. Kind of frustrating when you come into a ride where you fit one time and then don't fit the next time. That's really frustrating, honestly. That's no one likes that. It's like, can't fit on a ride. It's like, I just rode this like an hour ago, and they're like, oh, sorry, you don't fit this time. A lot of times you want to take it out on the operator. Be like, can't you try harder? Can you push it harder? Like, a lot of times the park says, no, the operator doesn't have to push that harder. If a person can't close the restraint on themselves, then pretty sure most parks have it written, like, then they just can't go. And it's up to the operator to be like, yeah, I'll help you. I'll give you a little nudge there so you can get in. All right, really short video this week. I'm not sure how I feel about that yet. But what are your thoughts out there? Anyone having trouble? Is anyone right on the edge like I've been for a long time where they can fit in some restraints and not fit in other restraints? I know if you're like me, it's like the older rides are your friends because you fit well in older rides, for sure. And also, is there anybody out there that can tell me other manufacturers that have designated extra large restraints other than Bollinger and Malabard, other than B&M? That's curious. I'd be curious to see who else is doing that out there. Because I really couldn't find any, but that doesn't mean anything. All right. I think that's it for this video. If you want to comment downstairs, like, subscribe, I do appreciate that stuff. If you want to leave a message for me, I try to read the comments. You can always email me at ryantheridemechanic@yahoo.com. I think that's it. Stay off the air gates. Bye.